It's time for a story. And it's a true story. Something that might unsettle you, might disturb you just a little bit. You have been forewarned. One day, about 5 years ago, a man by the name of Jason Arnold was 25 years old, was walking down the street. He noticed right there on the sidewalk was a pretty nice looking phone, a smartphone, and it looked to be in pretty good condition. He picked it up. He looked at it. It had been used, but there was no information on it as to who it belonged to. And there were free videos on there. One video was some random clips from various WWE matches spliced together, but done in a strange, peculiar way, as if somebody had burned them from online. He noticed there was a Trish Stratus leaded match from a Raw in 2000. There was an 8-man tag match from 2004 featuring the Dudleys, Paul London and Brian Kendrick, RVD and Rey Mysterio, Kenzo Suzuki and Rene Dupree. Lastly on there was a match from a pay-per-view he couldn't quite place, and it seemed to be Mordecai versus The Undertaker. While it didn't feature the whole match in this video, because the video itself was only 5 minutes long, it featured a good 3 minutes of action, the most on that video. And during the match, the two of them were fighting, and strangely, Mordecai seemed to be having shining light over him, while The Undertaker had a pale of darkness. And suddenly the lights went out before the video ended. And when they came back on, Undertaker stood in the ring, and Mordecai was gone. He did his taunt, and the commentators seemed to be confused as it was Taz and Michael Cole as they asked what happened to Mordecai. Jason thought this was strange because he didn't remember this pay-per-view match. And looking at the mats, he didn't seem to know what they were referencing to, as they seemed to say something about end of days, but he couldn't quite get a good grasp because the video recording was quite bad. The second video was a really strange one. It was a recording. Whoever was walking down the sidewalk late at night. There seemed to be a lot of bats around them. They kept moving the camera, showing the bats, and there's a black cat crossing their path. This only lasted for a minute and went off. But the third video was the strangest yet. The second video had simply been called Journey, and the first had been called WWE Moments. But the third was called WWF Hell in a Cell 98 Moment Caught on Tape. Jason smiled as he had to think, this has to be about Mick Foley, right? But then he noticed he missed one word there. Right below the WWF Moment Caught on Tape, the WWF King of the Ring Anthony Moment Caught on Tape, it said horrible. Do not watch if you are prone to suffer under violent images. He had to play this, and it was about 5 minutes long. As he watched, he noticed this was the Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kane First Blood match. And to his shock, it was going differently. The Hell in a Cell hadn't dropped. Suddenly, Stone Cold Steve Austin hit Kane as hard as he could with a steel chair, and to his shock, Kane seemed to be bleeding. Somehow, out of his mask, through his hair, he was bleeding. The referee called the bell. That seemed to have been enough, but then Stone Cold grabbed the mic, and he said, "You stupid son of a bitch. Kane, I told you, you shouldn't have made a deal with the devil that you did." Jason noticed Stone Cold seemed quite nervous when saying these words. He wondered, was something wrong here? Stone Cold said, "You okay? You said..." Stone Cold stammered a bit. "You said you would burn yourself alive if you couldn't win the championship tonight. Well, guess what? You ain't the champion, so why don't you get the cooking?" And Kane sat up like he does, and he looked at Austin. And suddenly, he went to the turnbuckle where he'd stored some gasoline, and he started pouring it on himself. Jason started thinking to himself, I never saw this. Was this some alternate, lost, botched match that maybe happened on the King of the Ring and after the show went off the air somehow? Either way, he was intrigued. He figured, they're only going to go as far as like that they did with Alexa Bliss last year at Randy Orton, right? It's not going to get too serious. Kane suddenly laid down, covered in gasoline, and he threw what looked like a box of matches to Stone Cold. Stone Cold opened the box of matches, they went everywhere. He slowly picked one up and he lit it and he threw it on Kane. Just one match and Kane was suddenly ablaze. Stone Cold at first seemed pleased with his work, but then a look of shock and fear came on his face. He had the microphone still in his hand. He said, "Well, hell, son, I might as well have a nice drink while I'm watching this piece of trash burn alive." He asked for a beer from the timekeeper, and the timekeeper threw it at him, and he started drinking the beer. But all of a sudden, Jason noticed as he opened the beer, he started slowly trying to pour some on the flames. He was trying to put the fire out, but he didn't want the crowd to know. The crowd was eating this up. They were cheering loudly. Jason couldn't believe this. This was so strange. He didn't believe how realistic this looked. There was no way Kane was actually on fire, right? Like this had to be a dummy or something, but he couldn't tell it looked like it. The footage also seemed to be of very high quality as opposed to the other footage on here. How strange, he thought. Kane kept burning though, even with the beer thrown on him. And Stone Cold, despite trying to hide it now, he got another beer and poured it on Kane. He goes, "Okay, you stupid son of a bitch. That's enough. Stone Cold don't need your pile of hatches. He gotta whoop your ass later," Steve Austin said. But it seemed like it was far too late. Because the next thing you heard was a loud, howling, desperate screams of Kane. "Ah! Ah!" It was shocking. For a man at that point who didn't even talk, to hear these screams coming out of him. Stone Cold himself didn't know what to think, and he looked at the camera and he said, "We need to do something right now. This has gone too far." And the video cut off. That was it. The entire footage. Jason thought, no, this has to be some kind of fake thing. Kane not only won that match, he never got burned alive for real, and he went on to wrestle a great career, well, mostly great career, of seemingly 20 years after this. And he started thinking, but what if there was another Kane? What if they just killed off Kane and replaced him? What if W just never told anybody? He thought, no, that's ridiculous. He started walking home and he decided, wait, should I take this phone with me? He kind of felt maybe it was too strange and weird. But no, he said, I'll take it home with me anyway. So as he started walking home, he started thinking more and more about Kane. More and more about the burns and the scream in his head. It was so loud. It was blood-curdling. The scream and the fire. He started seeing Kane as he got closer and closer to his house. At least he thought he did. He thought he saw a shadow of Kane in his red and black attire. He didn't know what was going on. He figured that he was losing it. "I gotta calm down," he said. He finally came home. He opened his front door. He went in his living room. The lights were all out. And all of a sudden, there was a big fiery explosion. And there stood Kane in his living room. Except it was Kane and he was burned. And he grabbed Jason by the neck and he choke slammed him until his head split apart. Ha 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 ha, happy Halloween.